A deadly collision at New York's LaGuardia Airport, and the airport is now closed. An Air Canada jet hit a fire truck on the runway. Now, this happened just before midnight. 2 pilots were killed. Dozens of other people are injured. In this video from the scene showing the wrecked plane, nose tilted up to the sky. The crash truck is seen nearby, and here is the moment air traffic controllers knew something went wrong.
Frontier 4195 to stop there, please. Stop, truck one, stop. Stop, truck one, stop. Stop, truck one, stop. Jet 646, I see you collide with vehicle there, just hold position. I know you can't move. The vehicle's there responding to you now.
Okay, joining us now with the very latest is CNN correspondent Gloria Pasmino. And Gloria, what are you hearing right now at LaGuardia?
Yeah, Audie, it's just devastating listening to that audio, hearing the radio operator telling the vehicle to stop. We now know that the vehicle collided with the airplane. There were 72 passengers aboard that aircraft, 4 crew members, and sadly, the pilot and the co-pilot were killed as a result of that collision. Now, dozens of passengers were also injured. 41 passengers and crew were transported to the hospital shortly after that collision. 31 of them have been released, and the 2 people who were inside the fire truck, which collided with the airplane, we are told are in stable condition. Now, here's what happened, and as you look at the images of the airplane, you can see the front of the airplane is completely destroyed. The collision happened around 11:40 last night. This is a Jazz Aviation flight that was operating on behalf of Air Canada. The aircraft, we are told, struck a Port Authority aircraft rescue and firefighting vehicle, which was actually responding to a different aircraft on the runway. This was flight 8646. It was coming in from Montreal late last night. It left Montreal around 10:30 p.m. local time and landed here at 11:40. It collided with the firefighting vehicle shortly after the landing. In fact, we heard from officials here at the Port Authority, which manages the airport. They described the moment saying the collision happened during the landing. Now, this was a regional jet aircraft. It was traveling south, going very fast, about 130 miles just before it hit that fire truck. Now, the passengers who did not have to be transported to the hospital were actually seen leaving the airport just a short time ago. I was able to catch up with one of them. He described the moment to me, telling me that it was a hard landing and that they had no indication that there was a problem on the runway. Take a listen.
We went down for a regular landing. We came in pretty hard. We immediately hit something, and it was just chaos from there. About 5 seconds later, we had come to a stop, but in that short period, everybody was hunkered down and everybody was screaming. Pretty quickly, we didn't have any directions because the pilot's cabin had been kind of destroyed. So somebody said, let's get the emergency exit and get the door in. Let's all jump out, and that's exactly what we did.
Audie, the passengers who did not have to be transported to the hospital were set up in an airline lounge. They were reunited with their family members, and as I said, many of them were leaving the airport just a short while ago. The FAA issued a ground stop here at LaGuardia Airport shortly after the incident. That ground stop has been lifted now, but the airport is closed. Officials telling us just in the last hour they expect LaGuardia Airport to remain closed at least until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The National Transportation Service Board, the NTSB, is on the ground launching their investigation. And I just have to say, the fact that the airport has to remain closed at least until the late afternoon, 2 o'clock today, is certain to cause a lot of delays, a lot of transportation issues here for passengers, which of course comes as we are seeing all these other problems, delays and long lines as a result of the partial government shutdown. So it's going to be a busy and likely, a troublesome morning for people who are going to be traveling. Audie?
Okay, that's Gloria Pasmino at LaGuardia with the latest. I want to bring in now CNN transportation analyst Mary Schiavo, former Inspector General for the Department of Transportation. She's also investigated countless aviation crashes. Good morning, Mary. Thank you for being with us. Just to give people the state of play right now, we have those images of the plane. We just heard from our reporter it was traveling something like 120 miles per hour coming in for its landing. When you listen to that air traffic control, those voices, what are you hearing that you'd want to investigate?
Well, clearly when an aircraft is given permission, clearance to land, basically that aircraft owns that runway. Because as you said, the aircraft was going 120, 130 miles an hour, on other planes much faster. But the brakes don't work that way. You have to slow it down with the thrust reversers. You do have brakes, but they aren't principally what slows the plane down. So once that aircraft was given permission, clearance to land, it owned that runway. Now, the fire truck we're hearing was also cleared to cross the runway. Did the controllers think that the fire truck would be crossing behind this aircraft, that it would be further down the runway? Those are things that the investigators will want to know. But because it's all recorded, everything that happens in air traffic control is recorded in the tower cab. Of course, there's also ground control and other controllers there. But at this point, speed the aircraft was going, clearance to land, it owned the runway. So that will be probably where the NTSB starts.
Can I follow up with what you said about the fire truck? I think most of us don't know how emergency services work on the tarmac. Tell us how this is supposed to be done.
Sure. So in air traffic control, in the actual control tower, they actually have what they call it the crash phone, but they use this for many things to get emergency services, firefighters, etc., to places on the airport. And we understand that a United flight that was taking off earlier and aborted to take off because of fumes in the cabin had called for services. And so this fire truck, probably other responder services as well, was responding to that earlier call. And so air traffic control does dispatch those emergency response vehicles, and they are trained airport specific. It's a very big, important part of each airport. You must have first responders, fire, emergency, medical, etc. And they are trained specific to that airport to know how to maneuver around the airport, to cross runways, to coordinate with air traffic control, not to get in the way of the train or the planes and the other traffic. But they are trained specific to that airport. So that will be another point of investigation. But from what we've heard from the tape so far, they had been cleared to cross the runway, and the plane landing had been cleared to land on the runway. The plane gets priority.
CNN's Shimon Prokupecz is live in New York, and you were at that press conference a few hours ago. What was their initial description of what happened?
Well, this was just the Port Authority officials that were having this press conference, and they are very limited in what they can say because they're not actually doing this investigation. So we learned some very key points here, in that in order for the crash truck, this fire truck, a very common procedure at airports that when they are responding to something, they need to get clearance from air traffic control, and that there was an emergency. They were actually responding to a call from a United flight that said that they were having some issues and they requested emergency vehicles. And so that is why this crash truck, fire truck, it's really known as a crash truck, was on its way and headed towards the runway. And based on what we can hear ourselves on air traffic control, they were clear. They were cleared to proceed. And it seems that everything was okay and that they were following normal procedure. And then something went terribly, terribly wrong, and we have this collision. I've been spending a lot of time inside the airport up on it's the 6th and 7th floor of the parking garage, where you can actually see the plane and the crash truck. I mean, the nose of this plane is completely in pieces. It would be very hard for someone who was sitting in those seats to survive. And sadly, of course, we learned that the pilot and co-pilot were killed, but also the crash truck. I mean, these are heavy heavy pieces of equipment. The crash truck is completely either upside down or on its side, just showing us the impact here, the sheer force of this impact. So now what will happen is obviously the NTSB will start to conduct this investigation, and hopefully we will learn more. But, Audie, certainly, I keep thinking about the air traffic controller, because you could hear his voice on that audio, and just those moments and that sheer panic when he is telling the crash truck to stop, and sadly couldn't stop in time.